to thank our room sponsor, MIAT College of Technology. And we'll go through and introduce all of our panelists real quick. They're going to give you a little bit background of where they're from, where they work, and we'll start with myself. I am actually your moderator for this morning's panel. My name is Ashley Flagle. I am the Deputy Project Manager of the Hybrid Thermally Efficient Core Project at NASA Glenn Research Center located in Cleveland, Ohio. I've been with NASA for 14 years. I actually have a degree, a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering from the University of Toledo, not too far from Michigan, right on the border of Ohio and Michigan. And I have a master's in mechanical engineering from Cleveland State University. And that degree has taken me all over the place at NASA Glenn. Started off as a mechanical test engineer, then I went on as an aerospace research engineer. And I've always focused in that first day in NASA aeronautics. So in working on jet engine components. So I worked in a section of an engine doing experimental research on turbines. And then I shifted my research into engine icing. So cool project of mine was taking a full-scale engine, and we have some cool facilities at NASA Glenn where you can stick an engine in the facility on the ground, bring it down to a vacuum, which actually simulates altitude, and we're able to throw ice at it and see what happens. And that was a really cool test because it's one of the kind, the only ice crystallizing facility in the world currently. And so we were doing research to understand why ice can form in an engine that's typically pretty warm. And so it was helping industry, helping the FAA figure out how to maintain our aviation safety when we fly through these ice clouds. Currently, as I mentioned, I'm a project manager, and the project I'm working on, we are trying to develop technologies for the next generation of engines, jet engines. So if you've ever flown, if you've ever seen a plane in the sky, those are the engines that we're working on, trying to integrate our NASA technology to make those engines more powerful, more fuel efficient, and better for the environment, and capturing different technologies of, can these planes run on electric propulsion, and utilizing different fuels and whatnot. So with that, I'm going to introduce our panelists, and we'll start with our professional woman in aerospace, Kaylee Konwiski. She's a process engineer at Barron Industry. So Kaylee, if you'd like to share a little bit about yourself.
Hello. Yeah, I'm Kaylee Konwiski. I'm a process engineer at Barron Industries, and I just graduated from SVSU, Saginaw Valley State University, about a year ago. My degree is in mechanical engineering, and I oversee a lot of the aerospace parts that move through the foundry here at Barron. So things like from pour all the way to sending it to customer, I make sure nothing goes wrong with the parts, or if something does go wrong for some reason, I jump in and have to fix the situation, make sure it doesn't happen again.
Great, that sounds really exciting. Thank you, Kaylee. Our next is our first alumni, Fiona Tourette. She's a flight director at NASA Johnson Space Center.
Hi, good morning, everyone. As Ashley said, my name is Fiona Tourette. I'm from Rochester Hills, Michigan originally, and I was on Team 201, the Feds, when I was involved in FIRST. So that was 2003 to 2006. I now live in Houston, Texas, and I work as a flight director at NASA's Johnson Space Center. So what a flight director does is we lead the mission control team for human spaceflight missions. Our job is to make all the decisions that keep the crew safe, keep the vehicle safe, in this case, mostly the International Space Station, and then allow us to achieve our mission objectives. So I'm in training to work on console for the International Space Station, and then the other half of my job currently is working on helping design a new spacecraft called Gateway, which is part of NASA's Artemis program and will be a lunar outpost circling the moon.
Thank you very much. And then our next set of panelists, they are first Michigan team members. So we'll start with Ellie, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Ellie. I go to Marion High School and I'm on team FRC 573, and I've been a part of First Robotics for 3 years.
Great, thank you. And next up, Cameron.
Hi, my name is Cameron. I'm on team 573 at FRC, and I go to Marion High School and have been a first member for 2 years.
Great, thank you. And Emily.
Hi, my name is Emily, and I go to St. Regis. I'm on the Savage Warriors FTC team. This is my second year as a first member.
Great, thank you very much. So I have a few questions for our panelists, and we'll start with Kaylee. And Kaylee, what inspired you to work in the aerospace industry?
I'm sorry, I missed that. Could you repeat?
Yes, what inspired you to work in the aerospace industry?
Oh, I actually started with an interest in the foundry industry before I started an interest in the aerospace industry. You see, when I was in college, they had an on-campus foundry, and we were walking by when they were doing a pour, and I originally just thought it looked really cool, really pretty. So I stopped in during one of their open pour days, and they let me create this little Batman symbol, kind of like a batarang, and I was hooked from there. I joined the American Foundry Society right there on campus. I got a job in the foundry, and I learned a lot of the science behind the foundry process. Things like the materials that you put in for ingredients when it's melted and the heat all affect things from color to strength to flexibility of the metal. And so I decided I wanted to do that. Getting out of college, I got a job here at Barron, which is all foundry business. And while I was here, that's when I was thrown into the aerospace world. I was put in charge of certain parts that were meant for aerospace industry, things like jets and planes. And it's a whole different world, whole different set of requirements, and it's a whole different set of puzzle pieces that you got to put together. And that is how I got introduced into it.
That sounds really exciting. Thank you. For Fiona, how did being a member of the first team help shape your career?
Yeah, it was really impactful. I was able, from my experience in first, to, at a core level, understand what engineering was. I loved space from middle school, but if you had asked me in middle school what I wanted to do, I would have said I wanted to be an astrophysicist. And I admit I had no idea what that meant at the time. But first was the first, sorry, that wasn't supposed to be fun. First was my initial introduction into what it meant to be an engineer and how to build something that, you know, completed a task. And even more kind of tangibly than that, I was able, from my first experience, to get an internship with NASA between high school and college through a program called NASA Robotics Academy. And that was kind of the first step on my NASA journey. And it got my foot in the door and got me able to continue to do some internships and eventually get here full time.
It's great. And I can certainly relate to, picking a career and not really knowing what it was. I knew I wanted to work at NASA. So I'm like, I'm going to be an aerospace engineer, but I had no idea. I was like, it sounds cool. It could get me in. So it took internships and exploring like what you did during the first program to really, truly understand what it is and kind of dive in headfirst into that career. Great. So we're going to talk to our first robotics teams a little bit, and like to know from each of you, and we can start with Ellie, what is your role on the first team?
So on my first team, I lead the business sub-team of our teams. So I work with all of our written awards, our animations, like I work with our sponsors and with the marketing of our team, and I lead the sub-team that works with that.
Great. And how about for you, Cameron?
I am the lead of the innovation team. So basically this year we opened up an innovation team for FIRST because of what was happening. And we came up with ideas for ways to help with problems going on with health related things.
Oh, great. That sounds really cool. And Emily, how about for you?
So I was on the appendage part of my team, and my main job on that was to build the intake for a robot.
Very cool. Thank you very much for sharing that. So we're going to go back to Kaylee. And what is the best part of your career and experience?
I mentioned beforehand that the aerospace portion was a whole nother puzzle. And I think that's probably the best way to describe my career and experience, is that it's just one big puzzle. Something that may work one day might go up in smoke the next day. Literally sometimes too, because it's a foundry and we work with hot metal. But what I mean is there's a lot that goes into making a part. And so if something does go wrong, you've got to go through everything to try to figure out what might be the issue. And it might not be apparent. So it's a lot of searching, a lot of problem solving to find that missing puzzle piece and make it work. And as far as my experience, I would say that I knew I wanted to go into foundry right off the back, and that is what I did. And I'm working directly with parts, which is going to give me a whole lot of experience for anything else that I might want to do, from research of more foundry practices, which is something I've seriously considered, to moving on to a different industry, say designing aerospace components. I have that backing, and I will have more of that backing to understand what is reasonable and plausible to make from the manufacturing side.
Yeah, very cool. Thank you. And I just wanted to let everyone know, as you're listening to our panelists, if you have any questions for them, please put it in the chat. And a little bit later, in probably next 5 minutes or so, we'll go ahead and start answering some of the questions we have in the chat. But next up, I have a question for Fiona. Would you like to share your most exciting project that you've worked on so far?
Yeah, definitely. I'm going to cheat and tell you about two.
Okay.
So
Sounds good.
I worked, prior to becoming a flight director, I worked on console and mission control as an ADCO, which stands for Attitude, Determination, and Control Officer for the International Space Station. So we deal with all the things that keep the space station pointed where we want it and flying where we want it, and so that we know where it is. And one thing that I got to work on that was really cool was changing the way that we controlled the space station while we undocked the Russian Soyuz vehicles. So those are the vehicles that bring the Russian and international crews to space station and back home. And basically what we did is we devised a way to do that without having to use propellant on the space station. So we were using big spinning wheels called gyroscopes to keep the space station where we wanted it while that undocking occurred. And so each time we did that, we saved about 30 kilograms of propellant, which adds up over time. So that's one thing that was really, really cool. And then I mentioned I work on Gateway. I've been working on Gateway for about the last 2 years. And it's just really exciting to work on part of the Artemis program. I obviously was not, hopefully obviously, was not alive last time we landed humans on the moon. And it is incredibly exciting to be a part of, working in the infancy of a program that's going to help us get there. And so being able to help the Gateway program understand what the astronauts want on their vehicle and what we as the operators need to fly it safely has been really, really exciting.
Sounds great. Okay, we're going to go on to our first robotics team, and this time we'll start with Cameron. And so my question for you is, why did you join the first team?
Honestly, I first joined because some upperclassmen came to me and asked if I was joining. I was really nervous. And so I said yes, but I stuck with it because I learned so many new things and everything became so interesting. And I found myself more and more involved.
Yeah, sometimes we need that little extra push to dive in and explore something new. So that's great. Emily, how about for you? Why did you join the first team?
So I first joined last year. So like I've always been interested in this kind of stuff. So when I heard about it, like one of my friends is doing it and she told me about it. So I thought it'd be cool. And so I did it again this year because I had a lot of fun last year and I learned a lot more this year.
Sounds great. And for Ellie, how about you?
So similar to Cameron, my sister's best friend, who was a senior when I was a freshman, was telling me about robotics, and she got me to join because it just sounded so interesting to have all of this real world experience that you don't really get in any other clubs. Like, I enjoyed business, and I was able to present to people and meet with sponsors and do all of this real world activity that I would never get to do in any other club that we have in my school.
Yeah, that sounds really interesting. Thank you. And for Fiona, your time in first, do you have any favorite memory you'd like to share?
Yeah, my senior year, we won our division at nationals, and it was just so cool. Like every year, nationals was just a lot of fun, and just the energy and the experience of it. But getting to be on the final field there, we did not win everything, but that's okay. And just having that experience with my team was really exciting.
That sounds like a really incredible experience. Very cool. For Kaylee, if you could go back and give your younger self advice, what would it be?
Oh, that's an easy one. When I was in high school, I was definitely leaning more towards an art career, and I also was one of those people who thought shop classes were kind of a easy class, one that you would take if you didn't really want to learn too much. If I could go back, I'd go take a shop class, metal class, wood shop, any of that, because oh boy, you could use that in real life. You could use that in what I'm doing now. I basically had to start from scratch by the time I got into college. And I really wish I could have gone back and taken shop classes.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I had similar experience where when I was in high school, like I saw a class and for me, I didn't want to take intervention. So I'm like, well, I'll just take this class. And sure enough, it gave me a lot of real world experience that I wouldn't have ever thought of. So I can certainly relate to that. For Fiona, same question. If you could give yourself, your younger self advice, what would it be?
That's a good question. I think the big thing for me is I would tell myself not to worry as much, like just to kind of go with the flow a little bit more, and trust that like if you focus one step ahead instead of 10 steps ahead, it's probably going to go a little better. I think I spent both in high school and college a lot of time kind of trying to get to the end goal and stressing myself out about it, and really just looking at, okay, what can I do now and what's the next step I need to do, would have probably helped me not worry as much.
Yeah, I can relate to that one as well, most definitely. And so we'll talk to both of our professionals a little bit more. So, there's always this talk of, we're trying to balance personal life and work, and then along with work, you've got a lot of different projects going on. So we'll start with Kaylee. How do you balance all of it?
To be honest, I kind of started this job right when COVID started. So like the week I walked into the door, 3 days later, the country shut down. So a large portion of my balance has to do with the internet. I would still go into work because we were considered a priority and necessary business. So I would work as I do normally here, and then I would go home, and part of my relaxation or calming down or just unwinding had a lot to do with talking to friends over the internet through apps like Discord or art programs to just kind of relax, do my hobby, things like that. So I kept work at work and everything else at home, but yet the internet kind of helped both mesh in between, because I would refer to emails and things like that for on days off. If anything was needed, you could just send a message in a blink of an eye. So
Yeah, that's really interesting. Thank you for sharing that. And for Fiona, the same thing for you.
Yeah, I'll say that keeping balance, it has been a struggle, and I've gotten better at it as time went on, but it's hard, right? Because I think any job, there's always going to be more work to do than you can do. And I think you can probably say the same thing about, if for high school students, that you can always study more. You can always, try and make your robot perfect before a competition. And ultimately, for me, I think some things that help is I have like set things I do outside of work that I care a lot about. So my newest hobby is improv comedy. So trying to learn how to be funny. I don't know if I'm succeeding, but I try. So having like those kinds of things that are just totally mentally different than work is good for me. The other thing that personally is important for me is just how I deal with technology. So I do have a work phone. It's on Do Not Disturb after 5 p.m. and it literally just sits in one place. Like I don't bring it around my house. I don't bring internet into my bedroom, right? So for me, it's just like, I know that I have to have these set rules or else I won't have balance. And I've kind of learned what that looks like over time. And I think the ability to say, okay, this is good enough, or I just have to stop for today, is something that it's taken me a while to learn, but is incredibly important.
Yeah, definitely setting those boundaries and making sure you practice, those boundaries are definitely key for balance. So Ellie, I have a question for you. Not a lot of people listening might know what FIRST is. So would you like to describe what FIRST Robotics is about?
Yeah, that's a big explanation, but a smaller explanation, I guess, would be like FIRST Robotics is just all of these people who have a bunch of different interests. I mean, there's people who are interested in electrical engineering, chemical engineering, biomedical engineering, and there's people who are interested in art or business. And it's all these people who have all of these different interests, and they all come together to work together as a team to make a robot, to make all of this team function. And I guess in the essence, that's what FIRST is. It's all these people from all different backgrounds and all different interests coming together to work as a team and make their robot and make everything that they have work.
Yeah, and Cameron and Emily, do you have anything to add to that about what FIRST is all about?
I'd like to say it's inspiring. You go into FIRST and you see all these different people, like Ellie was saying, with all these different interests, and it really just inspires you to do more. And it's so engaging and hands-on, and it's just all so fun.
Yeah, thank you. And Emily, do you have anything to add?
I feel like I agree with both of them. It's everyone comes from different backgrounds and everyone has different interests, and it's cool to all like come together and figure out how to build the robot and plan it out together.
Very good, thank you. So for Ellie, Cameron, and Emily, and Emily, we'll start with you first. Do you have a favorite FIRST robotic memory?
So probably one of my favorites was our competition last year. So it was really fun. So it was really cool to see like everything like work out, and all of our hard work paid off. We ended up winning an award, which is pretty cool.
That is cool. Congratulations on that. Hey, Cameron, how about for you? Do you have a favorite memory you'd like to share?
When we were scouting and looking at everybody else's robots and everything that they built and the different conceptualizations that they came up, it was just like so amazing to think of, see everybody's mindset and how they put it all together.
Very cool. Thank you. And Ellie, do you have a favorite memory?
My favorite memory would probably be states my freshman year, because that was the only time, because all the other years there was COVID, so we didn't have states, but just being able to make it there and seeing there were like 120 teams and walking around and seeing all of these teams you care so much and we're all working together. And even though it's a competition, it's still so friendly and supportive. And that's just one of my favorite memories because I remember how much fun it was.
Yeah, that does sound good. So we're going to go back to Kaylee, and I just want to remind everyone, if you have any questions, we have a couple more questions left, and then we can open it up to the questions in the chat. So feel free to please put some questions in the chat for our panel. So Kaylee, let's see. Could you explain one of the most exciting projects you've worked on so far?
I actually have an example right here. This is a pressure deck that goes inside of an F-18 Hornet and Super Hornet, which is basically a military jet. And I could show you a picture, but basically it looks like your stereotypical jet. It is one of our larger parts as far as what we make, but if you look at some of these walls, they're really thin, and that makes it harder to shape. And on top of that, because it's an aerospace part, it needs to be stronger than your average part, which makes it a little bit harder to make. We've run into a few problems with that specific part, but it's moving along pretty well, and it's probably my biggest puzzle up yet to date.
Very interesting. That's cool. I love how you showed that piece. That's really exciting. So is there a current project within your company that's really amazing or inspiring or excites you?
Honestly, it would probably be that part still, because we're still through the we're still working on it as far as developing it. It's not through full production yet. So that one would probably be the one.
Yeah, and that'll be exciting to see, being able to take it to full production, and that'll be really rewarding. So we had asked our professionals about balance, but there definitely is, as a student, trying to balance your extracurriculars and first with family and classwork. So we'll kind of have a little discussion on that. How do you balance? And we'll start with Ellie.
For me, when I like balancing my schoolwork with my extracurriculars and making sure that I spend time with my family, is just when I get home from school, I need to start working on homework. Some people can like lay on the couch for 2 hours, but I like to just get home and work on my homework and get that done, so that then once that's done, I can relax, I can hang out with my family and have all of this time. So it's really just focusing on time management and understanding that putting something off isn't going to help anything.
Very good. Cameron, how about you?
I'm someone who is involved in so many things, and like I just find myself getting more and more involved in a lot of things, and I just find myself in 7+ clubs, and I still have my sports to focus on. And sometimes it can be really hard, but for the things I can adjust the dates on, I try to put it on the dates where I have the least amount of things going on. And for homework, I try to multitask where I can do homework while I'm still doing other things. And just when I get home or when I'm in a car ride, talk to my family just so that I'm not distancing myself away from them while I'm involved in all of this.
Yeah, that is very good and great tips. I'm listening to both you and Ellie, and I'm like, man, it took me, many years, in college and whatnot to kind of pick up some of those techniques that both of you are using. So that's awesome that you're putting them into practice now. Emily, how about you?
So I'm actually at a track meet right now. But so I play like a lot of different sports and stuff. And so I like kind of like what Ellie said, every time I have homework, I always do my schoolwork and stuff first. And every time I have free time, I try to spend it with my family because I do have a lot of extra stuff that like takes up a lot of my time. So I try to spend all my other time doing my schoolwork with my family.
Very good. So we're starting to get some questions in the chat, and so one thing we have is what helped prepare you class-wise in high school for a job in aerospace technology? So we'll start with Fiona, if you'd like to answer that.
Yeah, so I think most directly, probably AP Physics and Calculus. My degree is mechanical engineering in college, and so being able to do, calculus and physics in high school was just a really direct connection to that. I did take a shop class. So going back to what Kaylee said about shop, I don't build things, right? We operate a vehicle and mission control. I don't build them, but still understanding principles of how to build things and how tools work was a really good, great class in high school as well.
And Kaylee, how about for you? Were there any thing in high school that classes that helped prepare you for, your current role? Or if you have any advice, if you could go back and take other classes, what would that be?
Like Fiona said, you definitely want to focus on your math classes. But I also think to some extent you could throw in a little bit of art class in there to add on to what she said. There's definitely a creative side in trying to figure out the design and how things are made. And I feel like if you take an art class or two to go with the shop and the science and the math, it really kind of helps get your imagination flowing, help you think up some of these crazy designs that other people wouldn't think of. So that's where I would say.
Yeah, that's a very good piece of advice. I agree with that.
Can I add one thing?
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, I didn't take a public speaking type class in high school, but I think anything in that realm of being comfortable in front of people and being able to speak and being able to, express yourself is incredibly important for any career. And so if you have that kind of opportunity, I think that's a phenomenal thing to take and learn about.
Yeah, that's a great piece of advice, similar to me. So I'm very introverted. And, when I was in middle school or whatnot, you would have never seen me do this sort of thing. Super quiet, but being involved in certain activities, I was in 4-H back then, and they had like public speaking competitions. And then in college, I was on a team. Think of it similar to FIRST, but instead of building a robot, I was building a car. And there was opportunities in the competition to do like the public speaking, like presenting business plan. And those two things for me just like helped me immensely. And now I feel a lot more comfortable getting up in front of people and talking. So yeah, that's a great piece of advice. You can find ways to try and incorporate the public speaking. That'll definitely take you far. There's a question from Jeff, and he asks, how long before we launch spacecraft from the moon, and what are the barriers? So obviously that's for you, Fiona.
Yeah, so the Artemis program, the plan is to go back to the moon, land on the lunar surface within the next 5 years. And so the Orion spacecraft is the piece that will take our crew up to lunar orbit. And then they will get into a lander that will bring them down to the surface of the moon. In terms of barriers, I think there's a few. The first is it's fast, right? We're trying to do something really fast, faster than Apollo, and we're trying to do it more sustainably than Apollo. And so I think what's hard about it is making sure that we know how to do it safely and sustainably, and in a way where we can go back to the moon to stay on the moon and learn a lot from these longer stays on the moon that help us eventually bring humans to Mars. So hopefully in the next 5 years, but certainly lots of work and a huge team working on it.
Oh yeah, yeah, and that's so exciting. I love following the Artemis program, and so I wish everyone the best luck with that. So we have a question for the professional women. What other career opportunities does your company offer? And we'll start with Kaylee. I don't know if she's still there.
There we go. Sorry, I forgot I was on mute.
Oh, that's
I asked
okay.
if you could repeat the very last part of that question.
Yeah, so let me find it real quick. What other careers or opportunities does your company offer?
I would say a lot of exposure, one, to the industry side of things. As a process engineer, I'm out on the floor. I'm seeing directly how things are made. I'm seeing a lot of the issues that are with, but also a lot of exposure to different industries. So we don't just focus on aerospace. We've got nuclear parts running through and military parts and even some vehicle parts that are running through. And so I work directly with these customers, and I'm seeing the issues that they're seeing with their part. I'm seeing some of the things that they're going through on their end, and I'm seeing a lot of different companies. So I'd say one of the best things that is about where I'm working is exposure.
Very interesting. And I'm starting to get a lot of questions pop up, and there's one, because I know we're going to be running out of time here. For Fiona, what skills did you learn in FIRST that helped you in your job today?
That's a great question. And I think the biggest thing I would say is the whole premise of FIRST and gracious professionalism, and the idea of like working as a team to solve a common goal is just so critical to what I do, and to what honestly most people do. So within mission control, we have a document called the Foundations of Flight Operations. You can just Google NASA Foundations of Flight Operations and you'll find it. But it's basically the principles that we as flight controllers demonstrate in order to keep our crews safe. And honestly, there's a lot of correlation between it and the principle of gracious professionalism and FIRST. So I think the teamwork and the ability to, work together to solve a problem was really important. And also, I learned humility in a lot of ways in FIRST. I really wanted to be on the drive team, especially my senior year. And in some ways, I was like, well, I'm captain, I should be on the drive team. And I just wasn't the best at it. I just wasn't. And so learning, that it's important to do your part and do what you're best at, but also be willing to not always get what you want, right? And realize that you're not always the best person for something, I think has been incredibly important for me in working on a team of people, which I do now every day.
Yeah, that's definitely, and that's a lesson that I had learned through the organizations that I was a part of in college, and kind of learning what your role is, and in doing what's best for the overall team as well. So there's a couple more questions for you, Fiona. What is in a control room when a flight is about to take off, and what is your job in there?
Yeah, so if we're about to launch, there's actually two main control rooms. So we launch usually out of Florida from Kennedy Space Center, and there's a launch control center in Florida. So they're looking at the actual rocket, right, the launch vehicle itself, and making sure it's safe. And then you have a team in Houston that's looking in our mission control center, that's looking at the vehicle on top of that rocket, and takes over control basically once that vehicle separates from the rocket, which is usually about 9 minutes later. That's about how long it takes to get to space. Depends. But so my role as a flight director in the Houston mission control room will be to lead the team that's monitoring that spacecraft as it goes into orbit. So We're looking at the information coming down from it. We're making sure it's healthy. We're ready to do what we need to do after separation. And then ultimately, if everything goes smoothly, right, if nothing goes wrong, a flight director's job is very easy because we have a wonderful team around us that's very well trained, and we just orchestrate a plan that we've practiced many times. But if something does go wrong, my job is to think about the big picture of the mission and figure out what the best thing to do is.
Okay, so I'm getting a note here that it's time to break. So thank you everyone for listening today to our panel, and thank you so much to all of our panelists for taking time and sharing your experience both in the professional world and in the first world. We greatly appreciate it. So with that, we will go ahead and conclude this panel. So thank you everyone.